Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and joining me, as always, is my very esteemed colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
I'm good, Dr. Dave. How are you doing?
Most excellent. Coffee cup number 4 makes you feel
I'm on
good.
I'm on number one, so I got a
Uh,
long way to go to catch up.
so we'd like to welcome our viewers and listeners back for another episode. If this is your first time, sit back, prepare to enjoy and relax. It's very it's almost like a state of meditation, I guess you could say. You hear the music in the background. So we try to keep it a little bit lively. And in our usual fashion, one of us will introduce a topic and quickly throw that ball to the other person and let them bake in their enthusiasm on the topic before we really start conversating. So today's topic is, how do you recover? And when we think about that, how do you recover? What does that really mean? And we're not talking about medical recuperation. We're just talking. I'll just leave it like that. Joe, what are your thoughts on how do you recover?
Well, that's a good question, and I know we've talked around this topic in many of our previous episodes. Just
Mhm,
the idea of how you recharge your batteries. How do
mhm,
you come back after a long day? And so that's also important when we're thinking about development, growth. We still have to take time to recharge, to take a step back sometimes to make sure that we're not burning ourselves out, burning
mhm,
the candle at both ends. As me and Dave have mentioned in the past, both of us did a
mhm,
lot of years. So how do you recover? So one of the approaches I take is, so in recent years, last 3 or 4 years, one of my hobbies was I took up bike riding, just going out and just riding some miles. Well, I haven't been as active this past year, and now that it's a little colder outside, I don't get out there as often. But that was one way where I could just throw on my headphones, and then just ride miles and just kind of burn off some of that energy, whatever
mhm,
was kind of getting at me that day. I can just kind of get lost in it and just ride and, forget about everything. And by the time I got back, I was typically, felt relaxed because I was, now
mhm,
worn out, basically kind of like you do your kids when you want them to go to sleep at night.
mhm,
You take them to the park, you make sure they burn all that energy up. And then when they get in the car, they're already passing out, going to sleep because you've done a good job of, helping them release some of that tension that they've had
mhm,
all day.
mhm,
So very similar, when you think about being ready for the next day or past the weekend. How do you get that, regain that focus again? And so that was what I've done in recent years. But now now it's colder outside, so some of the things I do is I actually come home, come in my office, which is kind of isolated from the house a little bit. I
mhm,
throw on some headphones. I either, watch YouTube videos, how to videos, things like that, or, start doing research on different topics because that's a way to get me away from maybe the norm, the things that's been happening during the day. This is a way to kind of shift gears. And then I'm always talking about opening my mind to the possibilities, and that's typically what I do. Just go research things that I'm not familiar with or things that I have interest in. And then I'll just go down that path of, researching different topics and different
mhm.
things. So that's one way for me to kind of recover, and to get back and prepare for the next day or the next thing. So I'll leave it. I'll stop right there just in case you have anything.
I like the part that you brought in about physical exercise. I'm assuming when you said bike riding, it wasn't like the vroom vroom type because you came
No,
back
no.
tired, and I guess yeah, you can be tired from vroom vrooming as well. But I think it's important um, to think about it from that perspective because they've proven it and disproven it and proven it several times that your physical health is just as important to your mental health as your
Right.
mental health is to your mental health. And some folks, like myself, as you mentioned in our younger days, full of energy, being able to exercise, work out, and all that. And as time went on, sometimes we don't have the mobility that we used to, or we don't have the what's the bendiness, the flexibility,
Right, right, right.
or the
Yeah,
energy.
bendiness,
Yeah,
flexibility. Yeah,
bendiness.
same
Yeah.
thing.
Um, So, as we get older, whether it's due to injury or just age or other conditions, the physical piece is great if you can do it, even in just moderation. Think about physical therapy from recovering from an injury. They don't want you to just start bench pressing 500 pounds, apparently. I don't know why, but they have you start out low and slow and easy. And that's kind of what how I view my how I recover. I don't have the energy, I don't have the flexibility I used to. So I turn to other things. Like I'll surf the internet, I'll read the news, I love documentaries and comedies and music and reading. And that's how I unwind, and video games, and so whatever it is, whatever your flavor of recovery is, that's what you need to do, and ideally it would be daily if you could just take a 5-minute walk or something like that. But when you get home from work or before you go to work or getting ready for that weekend or after you've had a bad day or a bad week, how do you recover? What is your Zen place, if you will? What do you do? Is it reading a book or reading a digital device? Is it, to your point, music? Is it, kind of checking out, or is it checking in with other people? Because
Right.
maybe your functional position at work leaves you isolated in a little cubby in the corner of a closet, and you miss that social piece. So maybe that's how you recover, is exposing yourself to that. Or like for me, when I was in the military going through college, military police, there was a lot of hurry up and wait and sit in that phone booth and just watch the tarmac remain dark. Right? It's like nothing's going to change, it's not going to
Right.
unfold, it's not going to crack, nothing's scheduled to come in. So your mind gets numb, so you want that mental activity, because
Right.
you feel numb mentally, and being numb mentally can physically exhaust you. So again, working out or becoming cognitively active through maybe doing a puzzle or whatever it is that you enjoy doing, that's what we're talking about. How do you recover? How do you, like Joe said, how do you recharge your batteries?
Right. Yep.
What do you do? Where do you go to? And hopefully it's a positive thing and not a negative thing that you're doing to recover. And we like to encourage those types of thought processes too, because there are some bad things you can do that'll help you recover, but it's not the best choices. So
Right.
we want to stay focused on the positive ways to recover. And that could be confiding in a best friend, a mentor, a coach, your spouse, your kids. What are these things that you enjoy doing? And for some people, it's just knowing that they can go home and just be to themselves. That's their recovery spot.
Right. Yep.
So I'll pause for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you brought up a good point about, whatever your Zen place is or whatever that thing is for you. But I think one of the most important things is being intentional about
Oh
that.
yeah, 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 of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess
Intentionality.
where I was going was that you said our mental health is as important as physical leading to mental health is just important, but at the same time, if you're not able to do the physical things, like me, I'm like Dave said, we're a little bit older, so it's not as forgiving when I try and go ride miles and miles, today. But at the same time, what are some of those other things that I can do that gets me to that same kind of place or close to it? And then that's what I say. I throw on my headphones, whether I listen to music or watch videos. And the other thing I do for downtime is just watch TV. But
Right.
like you said, it's that place that separates me from maybe the bad day or
Mhm.
just maybe needing to get away from things just to recharge and be ready and prepare for the next thing. So
Some of the other
that's
things I do, and this might sound a little silly, but maybe it's carryover from the military and just being exposed to being, keeping stuff clean. But I like to clean the house. I like to vacuum. I like to do the dishes. I feel like that sense of accomplishment, because I can zone out, because it's not something that it's a fairly mundane practice, I have to admit.
right. Right.
You vacuum, it's just back and forth. I mean, it's just a repetitious motion.
Right.
So, there's not a lot of thought that goes into it, but it allows you to still get away for a little bit,
Right.
and um, yeah, sometimes it's just sitting out on the patio. So
Right.
what is
Yeah.
it that you enjoy doing? So um, when I think about how do I recover? Those are the things I think about. And sometimes it's different. It doesn't have to be the same thing every time.
Right,
Sometimes
right.
you can change it up. Sometimes you just want to go for a drive after you get home,
Yeah.
which sounds silly, but it's like I just got home, but I really want to go for a ride or a drive. And it's like sometimes that's all you got to do, just that little extra time to
Right.
yourself.
And
And
I find myself doing that a lot as well. Well, recently, in the past few years, now my where I work at is relatively close. So
mhm,
and actually that was my time to recharge and my
mhm,
time. It used to be that time for me to, get back to recovery was the long drive that I had from on the way home, so that I
mhm.
wouldn't walk in the house
I
and
remember a few of those
just do.
conversations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. Me and Dave sometimes had those conversations during my long drive. So, yeah. But now that I don't have that, that is one way that I tell the wife, hey, I'm just going to go for a drive, and I'll do that. Just get in the car and drive. 15-20 minutes, maybe stop and do something, and come back. Yeah, just again to maybe recover from, you know, just being intentional about
Yeah.
recovery. Like I say, now that I don't have that drive, I had to fill that space some other way. So
Mhm.
that's one good way to do it as well.
Yeah, I always like to get on my little vroom vroom and take a little spin. Um, and it's one of those things where you pay attention, but when there's no one around you and you're on a nice little quiet road, you can just embrace the moment. And that's I guess that's another piece of it is embracing the moment while you're recovering. So you're really enjoying it and getting the most out of it
Right.
that you can. Cooking is another thing I enjoy doing, and Joe and I like to dabble in the grilling realm and the smoking realm, and it's something that we enjoy doing that allows us to decompress. It's a happy
Right.
place for us.
Yeah.
So, if you don't know what your happy place is or what you enjoy doing, start trying things.
Absolutely.
I was doing a briefing several months ago, and one of the participants asked me, well, I don't know what I like to do to relax or decompress. And I'm like, experiment, find out,
Right.
what,
Yep.
what things do you enjoy? Nothing. They didn't tell me what to enjoy in the military. It's like, well, I get that piece, but you got to find yourself. You can't just be a robot or a machine. I mean, what is it that inspires you or makes you feel full inside in a good way? So,
Right.
yeah.
That's a good point, though. Again, a lot of people, like we can both relate to the military piece because you had expectations, and I think that's part of the challenge of people that are getting out of the military is
Mhm.
because somebody's told them what to do, when to do it, how to
Yeah.
do it, and then
You want to
now they're
relax, go for a 5 mile run, but I don't like
right.
to run. So how do I relax?
Right. So yeah, I could see that, someone that has had been in that structured environment for so long, now trying to figure out what that looks like for them. How do they recover? And
Yeah.
again, that's a totally different environment. So you're right. Now that they don't have those requirements, they are kind of left at, what do I do now? And
Mhm.
and to your point, the best way to start figuring that out is to try different things. Try to do those things that you didn't do before. Maybe you did have some interest and it kind of maybe got subdued because of your other requirements and responsibilities. Now try those things. I mean, that's really what it is. Just trying those things to figure out what sticks, what
Yeah.
what you like.
And another piece that we can look at is there's been times where Joe and I have not had the time in our schedule, the physical time to decompress. You're working those 60-hour work weeks, maybe one day off if you're lucky. And it's like, how do you decompress when you don't have the time or the perceived time?
Right.
And I think a little bit of that gets into the time management piece and the goals and what do you expect out of yourself? What do you expect out of your job, or the relationship that you're in? So how do you manage that time? And I would challenge you, there are probably pockets of time that you can find and carve out and amass 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there to get that 10 or 20 minutes at the end of the day to decompress. To your point, Joe, one of the ways I used to decompress, like you'd mentioned, was the drive home. I used to have almost an
Right.
hour drive back and forth to work. That was my decompression time. Or
Yeah.
to the point that you'd mentioned on the long drives that you had, I had long drives and we'd talk because that was decompression and just being engaged in an activity to help you recover and even prepare for the next day.
Right.
So,
Yep.
um,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to go back to, yeah, you brought up a good point when you talked about, not knowing what that looks like. You're right. If you think about where you're trying to go, what you're trying to accomplish, then setting goals might be
Mhm,
helpful and defining what that looks like. I think part of that could be just identifying what you're trying to accomplish, what you're
mhm.
trying to achieve.
What can you
And
do more effectively and efficiently
right.
to make that time? Or
So
what can you do to extend that time? Like if you drive to work, I mean, maybe you drive slower instead of doing two over. Not saying that everyone drives two over the speed limit, but maybe it's just driving the speed limit. Something like that. Carve that time out, get those little bits and pieces in.
yeah, so again, I think defining what
Mhm.
that looks like is a good start, because then, like we always say, you talk about your destination or figure out your destination, and then you start working backwards
Yeah.
to figure out how you're going to get there. So to Dave's point, yeah, if you want to get somewhere, maybe you leave a little bit earlier so you can take a little longer to get there and
Yeah.
not be, breaking, the rules, traffic rules and
Right.
laws to get there. And then you're so erratic and everything else that you haven't had the time to kind of,
Right.
recharge. You're actually really overstimulating yourself again because you're
Mhm.
excited about, I got to get there, I got to be there. So
Yeah.
just some simple things like that could potentially help you
Mhm.
with that recovery and figuring out how to bounce back.
Yeah. And I can add in and I will add in another perspective. Think about those around you too. You can tell those people who aren't recharged. They're tired, they're edgy, they're maybe a little bit gruff or maybe absent during a meeting. They tend to like drift or something like that. So, you know, remember that it doesn't just only affect you, it does affect the others
Right.
around you. And
Yep.
especially if you're in a leadership or management or supervisory capacity, you know, that's part of maintaining that positive work environment and that positive workplace and that team culture. We're going to emulate each other to a degree, and that defines the culture and the accepted norm. So, do we want to be the accepted norm to be, gruff and edgy and tired and
Right.
that sort of thing, or do we want to create that positive environment because we're taking that time and even working together to make sure that each other gets the time that they need. And sometimes it's going back to just communication and networking and having good relationship with your team is just communicating, hey, I need to talk about something, or can we talk about something, or do you have a few minutes, or hey, how are you doing today? And checking in with your staff, a genuine checking in, not just well, I checked in with Joe, that box is checked. I don't like him anyways.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I did my job, but being honest and intentional and deliberate about it. So, just we keep kind of Joe and I like to take that holistic approach to the situation to understand that these things do affect us, but these things also affect those around us.
I think that's an important piece that a lot of times we don't think about or consider. That if we're having a bad day, typically that is going to be visible to others, and
Mhm.
we don't realize the impact that's having on them. Because someone might, see you and was thinking about coming up and ask you some questions, and now they look at you and say, "No, I don't know if I want to bother them at
Right,
this
right.
time. They look like they may be going through something." So
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's often overlooked, is how it affects other people, how it impacts other people. It's okay, if you're in a position where you don't have any authority, you don't affect anybody in any way. But when, like you said, if you're in that position, you're a leader, you're a person that people come to, and they see you, not all the way there, all
Yeah.
the way, available, then that sometimes may discourage them from coming up to you or
Yeah.
approaching you because they
And
don't want to
when we
add
talk about
to.
others, it's not just in the workplace, it's on the personal side too.
Absolutely,
When if you
absolutely.
if you have a bad day and you brag and you bring that home or drag that home into the home environment, that can affect your relationship with your family, your
Absolutely.
friends, your kids, your pets, whatever.
Yeah.
So we have to think about our actions do have consequences, positive and negative consequences. It's just, are we, to your point, Joe, being deliberate about what we're
Right.
doing? Are we really there? Are we really present in the moment? Or are we just physically occupying space, if you will?
Right. And again, most of us have had that experience
Mhm.
before. We try and mask it or try and cover it up, but for the most part, we probably don't do a good job of it.
Yeah,
And so that, like you said, it not only affects us, but it affects those people around us, both
yeah,
personal, professional. So just being cognizant of that anything we do typically will affect someone else. So
sure,
that just
sure.
keeping that in mind will maybe help with the intentionality and
Mhm.
understanding that you need to recharge,
Right,
that you need to recover so that it not only, doesn't affect you, but so that it doesn't affect other people around you as well.
right. So, as we wind down this episode, what final thoughts do you have for our viewers and listeners there, Dr. Joe?
Well, we touched on it at the very beginning, and the biggest thing is just really figuring out what that your zen place is, that place where you can kind of maybe step away for a period of time just to recover, to recharge, be prepared for the next thing. Whether it's like we said, whether it's physical activity where you can still get out there and do things that,
Mhm.
well, maybe get you in a good place, or listening to music or painting, cooking, whatever it is that takes your mind away, a drive, a ride, just whatever it is that helps you kind of refocus, maybe get energized, come back maybe fresh and new. But whatever that is, and it all starts with, again, just figuring those things out. Like Dave said, sometimes we don't know what that is, so try different things. I know I've tried different things to help me kind of relax, figure out how to calm down, be prepared for the next thing. So,
Mhm. Very well said, Joe. I'm going to leave it at that. So, with that, we'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. If you enjoyed, liked, or were amused by what you heard today, then please give us a like and share. We love doing this. We do it every week, and hopefully, you're getting something out of it. If there's an idea or two that you'd like us to consider, please feel free to email us. Our information's below. And I guess with that, until next time, keep on being your not so ordinary you.